Well, hey, it is Friday night. It is 6 o'clock, and it is time for the 6 o'clock club. We are here. I say we, I am here all by myself, but we have Elsa and Jack in chat already. Hello there, both of you. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully, we'll get a few more people in a minute onto the old chat. And we're gonna talk. It's an interesting one tonight. I'm all here by myself, so please ask questions in chat. Um, so I decided I kind of deep disappearing. Woo. We've got my webcam tonight. Hopefully the quality is a little bit better as well. Um, I'm going to move my name across. I don't know. My OCD. There we go. Um, so tonight we're going to chat about last night's game. We're going to chat tonight's game, games we got over the weekend, and then a big reveal to some of you. Some of you already had a chance to sort of play in it. Um, the system that I've been working on for a while. Now, don't get super excited. It's a very interesting system, but it's very rules light. So we'll come to that in a minute. I love it. The more that I play around with it, the more that I think it's definitely viable for me and for players at my table. Um, but we'll leave you to decide. So, last night's game, first and foremost, Icebreakers, Critical Role, 5th edition, level 12. A beautiful, beautiful game. It went kind of as planned, really. There was the cliffhanger that we started the game with, which was the reveal of one of the characters' in effect races because they had been masked up to this point for quite a while, and their backstory. But there's a lot of other sort of touching backstory stuff as well throughout the entirety of it, and something that the players had done previously. They decided to, well, perhaps we should check up on that, and they went, oh, this might be a problem. They also encountered a wizard's intern that was not familiar with casting magics and stuff. And they were communicating via ascending, and they must have burnt about 5 or 6 scrolls trying to get the message across to the players, which I'm sure that their employers will be very pleased with once they find out about that next session. So that was quite an amusing encounter as well. Um, and it kind of leans into, just because player characters can do things and the rules say this is how the spell works, feel free to play around with them a bit, twist it a little bit, and it creates interesting dynamics. In last night's game, got to do name checks. I love to do name checks. We had we had Michael, we had Jack, who's in chat, and we had Adrian as well. Um, Sort of nice 4 player character sized party. So it was able to do a lot of interpersonal stuff. And it's interesting because it feels like a lot of backstory came out. There was a lot of role playing. And it was, the players said themselves, it was one of their more enjoyable sort of sessions. So very, very good. Tonight we've got our weekly game of collateral damage. Um, Spoken about this at length. We've got V. Oops. Hey, Christian, how you doing? I know it's probably your date night tonight, but thanks for joining us anyway. Hope you're doing well. Hope your workout went well. Um, yeah, collateral damage. We have V, Stuart, Michael, Charlotte, Ben, Ryan, and we are unfortunately still missing Rich at the moment. We miss you, Rich. We really do. Christian says it's their night off, so beer time, and I don't disagree with that. Um, He's in a lot of pain though, and he can't raise his arms above your shoulders. Are you drinking your beer through a straw then, a big straw? Or is Rachel feeding it you? I mean, inquiring minds need to know. So with collateral damage, they are descending down into the mines of the Moorholds in Eberron, and it kind of they're going into dangerous territory now. They're a very capable party, level 18, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but down in those dark depths, there might well be some interesting surprises for them, and I'm quite excited about it. Really, it's um, things are coming to a head, and I'm excited about it. Absolutely, and it's always a fun game Friday night. There's a lot of I say we literally had hysterics last session, last Friday, um, for an encounter in their own making. So it's a real fun game for me, and hopefully for the players as well. Um, I'll move quickly on to games over the weekend, and then uh, the main event for conversation tonight is the rule set I've been working on. So tomorrow, a fair amount of games, potentially 4 in total, if one of the players can make it. Otherwise, we might have to postpone one of the games. But we've definitely got Curse of Strahd. As mentioned previously, they're coming to the end game of this, and it's heating up. It's very exciting. So I'm looking forward to see what they get up to in that one. And then we move to Tomb of Annihilation, which again is most towards their end game. Um, but the last few levels of the tomb are particularly dangerous, as you would imagine with the name Tomb of Annihilation. So that's going to be challenging. Then the game that might not fire, we might have to postpone it, is the Diplomates, a critical role game. Got a few players that got other commitments, so we're waiting to see whether there's enough to make that work. But it doesn't end there. For 7 o'clock, I am running a Call of Cthulhu game, which I am very, very excited about. It's called It's Just Not Cricket. Set in 1927, Oxford University, 2 colleges are about to do a May Day cricket match. They do this every year. I'm sure nothing at all is going to go wrong. So I'm excited about that. Then Sunday, I think we've only got 2 games. We've got our Sharn-based game, 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons Eberron weekly game, and then a game that Elsa is in, which is the playtest of the system I'm about to talk about. So yeah, so super busy weekend for me, even though I'm not kind of doing it's not as crazy as it usually is. But that just gives me more time for preparation and everything else. Okay, so I've been asked quite a lot. What are you working on? What is this this game system that you're doing? And it's came about for a number of reasons. Um, I run an awful lot of games, and I enjoy all the games that I run. But just like any kind of rule set, you find it doesn't necessarily gel with the players or gel with the GM, and you're constantly sort of tweaking it somewhat. There's also the rule of cool, which I really like, in the fact that, let's tell a cooperative story together. And it occurred to me, let's try and put together the things that I really like about running a game, and let us kind of try and work on a framework that we can run games to take out all of that tweaking, to make it just run very, very smoothly for both the players and for myself. And it is not as easy as one thinks. Um, Spent an awful lot of time sort of attempting to sort of come to terms with this. So I sort of listed a number of things that I kind of wanted out of the game, and that that caused me to have conversations with myself, which I quite obviously quite often do. And I kind of wanted it. Well, no, I didn't kind of want it. I definitely wanted to be cooperative. I like games where the dungeon master isn't against the players; they are actively working with them for maximum entertainment. Whether that is challenging them, scaring them, or just creating a magnificent story together, I wanted it to be cooperative. Um, and I came up with a tagline: "No limits, only twists." I do this a lot when I title things. It just gives me kind of like a mood board or an ideas board. Mm, and then I did a lot of thinking, and it occurred to me, and I will blatantly hold my hands up here and say, I am not a games designer. So um, all of this was just being introspective and thinking about the things that I've experienced. It kind of seems to me that there's two parts to any sort of role-playing game. There's the system, which is kind of the mechanics, the interface between um, how the players and GM perceive the world, and the mechanics to determine how successful they are in whatever they do. I mean, you all know what a system is, but it was kind of, what is a system? What is it? Um, and I kind of like it when the system is like a game's engine. You know, it's there, but you don't notice it's there. You don't have to really particularly pay much attention to it. It's doing the work it needs to do, but it's not interfering in the enjoyment of what it is producing. You know, if you're in a really nice car, you don't want to notice the engine, you just want to enjoy the drive. So, um, it occurred to me that I wanted to strip everything back. You know, I kind of wanted it to be um, rules light and easy. So the next thing I kind of decided upon as a design feature is I kind of wanted it to be the engine as it was, kind of invisible, but also very easy for anybody, regardless of kind of age or being new to the hobby or not even knowing about the hobby, to be able to sort of understand it more or less immediately, certainly within kind of 10-15 minutes, and go, okay, yeah, I'll give this a go. Um, and again, this was somewhat challenging because again, you have to strip everything right back to the bare bones. Um, so that was another sort of box I needed to sort of tick. Um, and then it occurred to me that the second thing is the setting, and I kind of didn't want to base it in a single setting. I didn't want it to be or rather just a fantasy based game, or just a science fiction one, or just a sort of dark future one, or just a horror based one. I kind of wanted the mechanics, the engine, to run on anything basically. So you could pick up the rule setting and go, all right, let's do a space opera, or let's do a supernatural mystery. Um, I also wanted it to be able to kind of reflect um, games that have almost zero combat. and also reflect games that have a lot of combat. Um, and there was two ways we could go here. We could sort of go, right, well, we're going to have rules for everything, or we have rules for nothing. And I plumped on rules for nothing. Um, so those were the kind of thought processes. So what I've developed is a system that is nigh on invisible, that sits there. Everybody can pick it up really, really rapidly and um, interface with it, and it doesn't re- take away from the enjoyment of the game. And then the setting, well, the setting could be anything. So it occurred to me very much kind of like the kind of products that you buy a murder mystery in a box. I kind of wanted to be like that. You would buy a role play game for an evening and you go, I kind of want a science fiction adventure. So you'd buy that one shot. The rules would be there, one, maybe 2 pages for you to learn. And then the meat of that scenario would be the information about the setting, the style of the setting, the type of player characters that could be, the story. Um, so it means that we lean more into the setting than the rules itself. No worries. I'm glad you're listening. Thank you very much, and enjoy your D&D sesh. Just nattering on here, Paul, about how I came about this rule set. Um, so that was kind of much of the thought processes behind it. The system defines how the characters are generated and how they can affect the story, and the setting is the world that they interact with. So the rules, really light. Characters are defined um, by 3 stats. Now this sounds a little bit strange if you are coming from a lot of other systems, but I wanted to strip everything back, and I kind of was like thinking, well, what is it? Do we have to define the character's strength or ability to be agile or charisma? And I kind of realized that when I'm running more complex systems, I quite often in my mind go, well, what are they doing? Are they doing a social skill? Are they trying to do something that is physical? And then I realised there are these 3 pillars of role playing. There is sort of combat, there's exploration, and the social. And these 3 pillars sort of tie together, um, basically role play games. And I thought, well, why change something that isn't broken? So rather than combat, I've called it physical. And then we've got social, and then we've got exploration. And literally, those are the 3 stats for the characters. Then the next was how do we find these characters, and how do we want the mechanics of the game to actually work? And I'm a very big fan with pools of dice. People like rolling dice, but then I remembered we kind of, in our initial brief, we wanted it to be accessible to everybody, even new players and people that never played role playing before. So it kind of felt that D6s are the way to go. Everybody knows a D6, and it could be argued that polyhedral dice are now in the zeitgeist. A lot of people know D20. I mean, we've got a D20 for our logo. But I wanted to bring it to that point of being easy. So I kind of thought D6s, and I like pools of dice. So I kind of thought, well, how about the player allocates a pool of dice to each of these stats, um, and that determines how good they are. So the next question was, and this is kind of still a work in progress, well, how many dice would a starting character have. And I think the sweet point for the games that we've tested so far is 7. So you could split 7 dice over those 3 stats. So you could have 5. You have to have at least 1 in one of them, and no more than 5. So you could have 5, 1, and 1. That is 7, or you could have 2, 2, and 3 if you wanted to do it. And how the system works is you roll that pool of dice. For instance, if you are attempting to do something social like persuade someone, and what you want to do is hit a target number, not with the total of dice, because again, I didn't want maths to be particularly involved. So you don't add up the dice, you're just looking for a target number on at least one of those dice. So for instance, if it was, you know, a medium difficulty challenge, you would roll your dice pool, and a medium difficulty challenge would probably be you need a 3 or higher on at least one of those dice. So quite simple, really. Very, very straightforward. And in terms of the storyteller determining which kind of pool of dice, you can kind of work that out with the players, but it should be fairly obvious. If you're a physical character and you're in combat, you'll be using the physical pool. If you are sort of doing some intrigue, social, it'd be a social role. If you're doing exploration, if you are trying to discover something, it would be exploration. So that is more or less how it works. And obviously you have trivial, average, challenging, and extremely rare sort of numbers to hit. Everybody likes getting a critical though, so we have played around with the idea that if you get 2 6s or more than 1 6, something extra happens as well. So that is the bare mechanics of it. It sounds crazily simple, and it is designed to be that. Very much designed to be that. And you kind of say, well, I want to be this type of character, and it's like, yeah, that's great. What I've often found with extensive rules try to cover everything, but extensive rules not only tell you what you can do, they also tell you what you can't do. With this system, provided it fits within the setting, the scene, you can do whatever you want, but I want a magic sword. Okay, well, I would suggest you put 5 dice in your combat then. That's a good way of explaining why you've got that magic sword at character generation. You can name the sword. I want to be a dragon. Okay, well, you can be a dragon. There is no limitations other than your imagination on this sort of rule set. I mean, the proviso is it needs to fit to the setting that is designed for either the evening or the campaign, and that can easily be judged pre-character generation. Rules were meant to be broken under the rules of Is It Cool? Absolutely, Cara, except in this system, there are no rules to break. The idea really is the whole thing's cool. You can try to do whatever you want. You want to be a magic user. Okay, well, if you are kind of a bard, maybe it's your social skill you use to cast your magics, to do your suggestions, your persuasions, your enchantments. You would use your social stat for that. If you were doing damage, you would use your physical stat. If you were trying to scry on something and explore, you would use your exploration stat. So it kind of all works there, and it all balances out in the fact that if you want to be a combat mage, put your combat up. If you want to be a sort of social dealing, manipulating type of mage, you'd have your social higher. But But I hear you say, surely everybody's more or less the same. And well, yes and no, because obviously you design your character, you describe your character, you create your character's backstory without massive limitations. Um, so that is good, and the idea is the setting that comes along with the rule set gives you lots of ideas for this. Secondly, when you play the game, you might find items that will increase your dice pools. So you might find, if it was a fantasy game, a mask of charming, and it might give you extra dice in your social, for instance, or you might literally find a Vorpal sword, which will give you dice um, in your physical. You might also have conditions put upon you. For instance, you might become sort of blinded, for instance, until it can be healed. So therefore, those conditions would be reducing dice from your dice pools. Um, so that's kind of how the players interact most of the time with the setting and the NPCs within the world. But I wanted it to be storytelling and I wanted it to be cooperative. So we have created something in additional to that. Um, I don't know how unique it is. I'm not even entirely certain it will work in practice. We're still playtesting it at the moment. Um, but firstly, you don't have as characters your own hit points. You don't have life points. What you have as an entire group is hope, and hope is a pool not of dice but of points that is shared amongst all of the characters and the players. When the hope reaches zero at the end of an encounter, which we call scenes, if the characters don't have any hope left, then that is the end of the game. Um, that is the end of the game. Pause. Yes. Did you consider other simple systems like 2D20 or Gaia? Absolutely. I draw an influence from many different things, and it's great to see. It really is to see that these games are um, sort of being innovative. Another big one is Blades in the Dark. There's a lot of game systems out there that I think are very cool. A lot of the Free League stuff is super awesome as well. Um, but I kind of really wanted to strip things back. Um, so yes, so hope is a set of it's a pool of points that belongs to all of the characters and technically the players. And if hope reaches zero and a scene ends, then you have lost all hope and the game winds to an end. It doesn't necessarily mean that all of the characters are dead, but it does mean that for the moment you have been stopped in your tracks and unable to continue with the task at hand. Um, you start off the game with a certain amount of hope, and this does vary between types of setting. If it is a horror based game, your hope will probably start out lower. If it is a high fantasy superhero type of game or a game that's very cinematic, akin to Feng Shui, your hope would start higher. Um, when a protagonist does damage to one of the party members, it will reduce your hope. So hope is very much a mechanic for measuring um, your survivability or to the end of the game. But hope can be used as a resource as well. So uh, characters can spend hope for rerolls. So if you didn't get that roll that you needed, you can reduce your hope to re-roll. But you can also spend it to twist the narrative. We wanted to get the name in there, and I think it works quite nicely. And this works very much like fate or fortune or flashbacks, in the fact that you can't unwrite something that has literally happened, but um, you can cause something to happen or have previously done something that will aid you in your success of this. And we wanted it to be cooperative storytelling. So this is a good way for characters um, to in effect have that agency to help tell a story. Um, so that is hope. Very important, because if you spend it to twist it, but you haven't got anything left at the end of the I'm calling them scenes rather than encounters. An encounter is a scene, and I kind of like the idea of a scene rather than encounter, because encounter sort of seems to me to kind of indicate like a combat, whereas a scene could be a social encounter. You could be defeated through some satire, some clever talking, or some being talked down to, and you could take loss of hope points from a social encounter. Especially if it was in a setting where etiquette was very critical. So hope is an interesting mechanic. And one, it's the pool of success, and two, it's um, the ability for the players to have a chance of extra success and to twist the narrative. Uh, Absolutely, Cara. So if a player was reckless, spent loads of hope points, does that mean the party suffers? It means you all suffer. The game, if you lose all hope, would come to an end. I said at the very start of this, designed to be a cooperative experience. And this is very much a leveler, in the fact that a session zero would take place and you would all agree on how you would decide to spend hope. Um, but there is always hope. So there are ways during the game to regain hope as well, through perhaps succeeding, finding various items, um, completing certain quests, defeating certain creatures, all of which will increase your hope. And this is why I say, and it's an important distinction, it is only when the scene ends if you do not have any hope. So you could be against it, you could be out of hope during a scene, but if you successfully complete this scene and come out the other end, some hope would be garnered and you could move on to the next scene, basically. So it is quite a challenge. Absolutely, it is quite a challenge to do this. And yeah, um, it means that everybody needs to work together as a group, a collective, to interact with the story, to help tell the story, to entertain each other, and to decide whether you want to spend that hope or not. But of course, the storyteller is equally as important, and sometimes it's important to remind people that where there's hope, there's sometimes despair as well. So there is a despair mechanic where the storyteller can twist the narrative by spending a despair point or two. And that puts complications in the way, more complications than was about to be expected. Um, so the narrative can twist and turn through these scenes as we seek out to tell a magnificent story and entertain each other. Um, and I think that's the gist of it, really. I don't know if any of that has made sense. If it hasn't, I might well have to go back to the drawing board. Um, but it is a work in progress. Incredibly light. The greatest challenge really is for you to go, right, so I want to play this type of character, and then without all the prompts and hints from like a player's handbook to decide upon a theme. But I believe that the majority of people, they draw inspiration from all sorts of different pop culture, and quite often they want to go, I want to be like that character in the movie, and they come to the rule set and it's like, well, okay, I'm this is about as close as I'm going to get. Here you can be that character from the movie, absolutely. There's nothing to stop you having the equipment and the gear, because it is flavor, it is style, um, um, and that's kind of what I want to encourage is this concept of um, sort of no limits, only twists, that you can be the characters that you want to be, that you will work together, because I want it to be a cooperative thing to tell this story and to overcome the problems that are put in your way. Um, so I don't know. The game that I've run 2 sessions so far. The third session is coming up this Sunday evening. It's been seamless. What I found amazing is we don't have to go, oh, just a minute, let's look up that rule. Um, I mean, it is a play test, so we do sort of occasionally brainstorm and go, is that working? But that's because it's a play test rather than it's the rules itself. Um, I'm very, very interested. Uh, I'm just going to read Kara. Come in as Ripley from Alien with the power of the beat. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Uh, Cora said, "Come in as Ripley." I was thinking of the town Ripley rather than the character Ripley, but I now know what you mean from Alien. With the power of being the only sensitive person in a horror movie. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different ways that you can do it. In fact, there is all the ways, because that is what the system is designed to be. And the idea is, with those pool of 7 dice that I spoke about, that's a starting point. That's kind of the baseline. If it was like a superhero game and we wanted everybody to be, um, you know, powerful, there's no reason why you can't start off with 10 dice to split between your pools, or 20, an unlimited amount of dice if you really wanted to play that style of game. Um, the mechanics underneath the hood are designed to be tuned down or tuned up depending on the experience that you want to get. And the same with hope, which is part of the mechanics, is that you can start off with a very strong pool of hope if you want it to be heroic, um, with the fates twisting in your favor as you move left or right, um, or very grim, and everything is against you, starting off with um, super small amount of hope. Um, and I can certainly see that there would be moments or times when the big bad turns up in perhaps a horror-based game, and it's like, oh, you've encountered Cthulhu. Now, that would be in Call of Cthulhu a big sanity roll. People would go mad and whatever. In this, you could easily say, this means that you have lost all hope. And it would be down to the players then to gain hope during that encounter so that they could get through to the next scene with at least one hope, so it doesn't all come to an end. So you can play around with these statistics quite easily and do some quite interesting things with them, I think. Um, I haven't overly come on to combat, and we are beginning to run out of time, but combat would be fast and furious. I'm very keen on the idea. I do like the rules from Feng Shui about minions only having one hit points. So the majority of opposition you would come up against, provided that you manage to strike at them, you would take them down. More powerful individuals or creatures, you might have to hit one, two, three, five, even more times to take them down. But it means that combat should be fast, should be cinematic, with you describing what you're doing, not doing the maths behind it all. And of course, if you get hit, then they would do some damage to you. Hope if it was only an unnamed NPC, probably only take 1 point of hope off you. If it was a massive, hideous creature from the abyss, it might reduce your hope by half. It doesn't even have to do a numerical value. It could just be it halves your hope. Um, Anything to make the story more interesting and challenging for the players. There might be a way, for instance, to twist the narrative so that you could have avoided any hope loss during that encounter. It's open to interpretation. Um, to create cinematic moments and all the things that we remember at the table. And to my mind, we remember the role playing. We remember the big encounters and the successes. We do remember the rolling of critical successes, which is why I wanted to um, keep in there. And we don't overly remember the all of the mathematics behind it and the things that grind things down, or someone wanting to look up a spell and having to um, read through the text of the spell and kind of try and work out exactly what correct keyword and what it does, and will it affect this or will it not affect this. The idea is to get a game that flows beautifully, um, that creates memorable moments and is great fun. And I think we are on the road to this. Um, we are on the road. So I've got a game to run in 15 minutes. I'm off to do some collateral damage. I'd like to say a big thank you to you all listening to me monologue and try and explain this game to you. Um, I will be opening up play tests very, very shortly, so watch out for that on our Discord. I want to say a big thank you to everybody in chat for hanging out with me on Friday. Hope you found it interesting. Um, I'm very keen to hear your comments about it. Very keen to get you into games so you can see whether you like it or not. And that is about it from me for this week. No 6 o'clock clubs tomorrow or Sunday, but we will be back again on Monday, surprisingly at 6 o'clock. Take care for everybody. Make sure you have a great weekend. Look after everybody. Stay safe. See you later.